So far, you've seen how to use AngularJS to manipulate HTML, but in order to build a fully fledged client for the REST API from the REST API chapter, you're going to have to learn how to make HTTP requests from AngularJS. Now, the preferred mechanism to use HTTP in AngularJS is through the $HTTP service. Now, recall that you've seen the term service before in this course. You use the .factory function to register named services on the server side. You then wrote routes that depended on these services. As it turns out, AngularJS code is pretty similar. So with that in mind, let's write some code that uses the AngularJS $HTTP service. This code is in this hello-http.html file. This code will be the basis of your retail application's user menu, which will show the information about the currently logged in user. The user menu is contained in a separate JavaScript file, which is included with this app.js call. All this HTML file does is use this user menu directive. Now, in order to talk to your REST API, you need to actually start the HTTP server that you wrote in the REST API chapter. If you did the REST API chapter's homework, you should have all the credentials in place to start the server. Just copy the config.json file from your completed assignment into the server directory in this chapter's sample code. For instance, if I navigate to this hello-http.html file in the browser, I get a prompt to log in. This URL links to the /auth/Facebook route that you wrote in the REST API chapter, which will log you in with your Facebook account. So when you click login, you get redirected to Facebook to authenticate. And now once you log in, you get redirected back to the home page. Now if you go back to hello-http.html, you'll see that I'm now logged in with my Facebook account. So now you'll notice that the browser is no longer just visiting a static HTML file, it's actually talking to a Node.js server. Now there's one addition to the server code that you should be aware of, this one express.static call. This call makes HTML files in this chapter's sample code available via HTTP. So when the browser is pointed to localhost 3000/6-examples/hello-http.html, the server will respond with the static HTML file 6-examples/hello-http.html. So with that in mind, let's take a closer look at hello-http.html. There's one directive, user menu, which uses the myHTTP controller, which is defined in app.js. So let's take a look at app.js. So here's the user menu directive, and here's the myHTTP controller. MyHTTP controller relies on AngularJS's built-in $HTTP service, which enables you to make HTTP requests to a server, much like the super agent module that you saw in the REST API chapter. This code makes an HTTP request to the /API/v1/me endpoint, and if the result succeeds, it exposes the user to the AngularJS scope. Now recall that the response to the /API/v1/me HTTP request looks something like this. The user gets back a JSON representation of the currently logged in user. So there are two key differences between this HTTP request and the super agent requests you saw in the REST API chapter. First, browsers typically restrict the servers that JavaScript can make HTTP requests to. Specifically, you can only make HTTP requests to URLs that have the same origin, hence the same origin policy. Effectively, this means that you can only make HTTP requests to the same domain that the HTML was originally loaded from. For instance, the /API/v1/me in app.js will get translated to localhost:3000 when you load up localhost 3000/6-examples/hello-http.html, because localhost:3000 is the origin of this HTML file. Now let's go back to the navbar directive. The template for this directive has two divs. The first div is only shown when $scope.user is defined, and it shows the logged in user's username. The second div is only shown when scope.user is not defined, and provides a link for the user to log in. Note that you don't have to do any extra work to inform AngularJS of the change to the $scope.user variable here. The $HTTP service informs AngularJS when the HTTP response is returned, so AngularJS knows to re-render the page. So now you previously learned how to test directives, but how are you going to test directives that use HTTP? In many cases, you like to stub out the HTTP calls so you can easily simulate error responses from the server. AngularJS is built to be highly testable, so you shouldn't be surprised that AngularJS has a powerful capability to stub out HTTP calls for tests. The ability to stub out HTTP calls comes from this angular-mocks.js file and its corresponding ngMockETE module. Let's take a look at how your Karma test will use Angular mocks. So once again, this test.js file contains an AngularJS dependency injector, but the AngularJS dependency injector now depends on this ngMockETE module. Among other things, ngMockETE gives you access to this $HTTP backend service, which enables you to stub out HTTP calls. So here's this file's only test. The HTTP backend.expect get function tells AngularJS to expect an HTTP request to /API/v1/me, and the respond function tells AngularJS to respond with this given JavaScript object. You then need to call flush on HTTP backend, because when you call expect get, HTTP backend won't send the response until you explicitly call flush. Now once HTTP backend has responded, your directive should display the username $HTTP backend sent back, so in this case John, based on this response.